Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to She's Fruitful podcast. I'm your host, Angela Shakeel. Really so honored and very excited for today's episode with another topic, but my favorite and my beloved sister with Charissa. And we guys are honestly enjoying doing this series and just continuously bringing new topics on our She's Fruitful podcast and every week now. So we welcome you, Sister Carissa. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me again. It's so awesome to be back again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sister Care. So, before we were just talking about this live session and we were just discussing how honestly we are just loving doing this series every week now. And we are just talking about the things which is relatable to our physical Christian life and in which we are just continuously facing nowadays and which is just fit in our daily lives. So that's amazing how we both are also getting precious time in the presence of the Lord and spending time together, doing Bible study and just filming sessions for everyone. So that's amazing. And I know God is on the move, and this is just going to be amazing.
It is. I'm really excited about our topic for today as well. It's been really on my heart recently because I've been working really hard on changing my words and what I not just confess over myself, but over the people that I love. So I'm really excited to talk about this and the power of words.
Yeah, exactly. I can say that it is very relatable to our physical life. And I can say that if we personally know that the about the what's the power of our words, then it's mean that you are doing an amazing life with every person.
Yeah. Um, it's one of those things where I think so often we don't think about our words and how they affect other people. I think we think more about how our words affect ourselves. Like we think about speaking over ourselves only. But I've seen in recent years when I've realized that the words that I speak over my children or over my husband have power, and I change the way that I speak about them, their lives change for the better too, because I have the ability to speak life not only into my life but into other people's lives. And I actually have a story that I'll read at the end of this from Kenneth Hagin from when he was alive and he was ministering. I'm really excited to share the story, even though it's kind of a sad story, because it really gives us a great example in our modern time because the Bible is so far in the past. I think sometimes we have a hard time relating to that. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to have a more modern story, even though it takes place in like 1943. It's still more modern to
Oh.
us. Yeah, but it's still more modern to us than I think the Bible is because I think sometimes we read these stories and they happened so long ago that we have a hard time relating, but I'm excited to talk about this and get into it. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Before this live session, we both were discussing about the topics which we shared before,
Yeah.
and I can say that God is just doing amazing things. And personally, I am just getting to know more deeply about these things, which is very uncommon in our lives, and we don't take it very seriously. Like we
Yeah.
are like, oh, I'm seeing this thing in this relationship, in this friendship, it doesn't matter, and I can say anything to that person, to that my
Yeah.
friend, but it doesn't matter. But it does matter because the person who are just facing that problem, and may the words of yours, maybe that will impact that life, or maybe that will not impact her life or his life.
Yeah.
So it does matter what we are saying from our mouth and from our tongue. So I can say that it's very much needed.
Yes. So I'm gonna actually start with Matthew 12:33 through 37 today. Um A tree is identified by its fruit. If a tree is good, its fruit will be good. If a tree is bad, its fruit will be bad. If you brood of snakes, how could evil men like you speak what is good and right? For whatever is in your heart determines what you say. A good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart, and an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. And I tell you this, you must give an account on Judgment Day for every idle word you speak. The words you say will either acquit you or condemn you. I remember reading this, and I'd read it before, but it hadn't really hit me that, like, every word I say, I have to take responsibility and stand before God and give an account for them. And I remember rereading this and it hitting me. We talked earlier about how, like, certain things in your life, God will highlight to you at different times. And I realized God was saying, Carissa, the things that you say, they matter. And I am going to hold you accountable for them. And it made me so much more aware of the things that I say that are wrong. And it's made me so much quicker to say, God, I'm so sorry I said that. That was not right. Or I repent for speaking that over that person. And I rebuke the words that I said. And I do not want that for that person. Or I do not want that for myself. Or that's not true. Because I think we all have a thing where we'll say negative things about ourselves. And we don't even think about the negative thing that we've just spoken over ourselves. And when I was struggling with depression before God had healed me from it, I would say, well, I'm just broken. My wiring's just wrong. Because I really truly believed the lie that the enemy was telling me that something inside of me was just created wrong. And I didn't even think about how offensive to God that was because God made me. He handmade me and wove all my inner parts. There's nothing wrong with me or how I think God made me to be this way. He wanted me to be unique. He didn't want me to be like everybody else, just like He doesn't want you to be like everybody else. He wants you to be yourself. And it matters the things that we say. And I stopped saying those things about myself and I started saying nothing missing, nothing broken, everything in its place. I am who I'm made to be by God, and it changed the way that I saw myself. I might not be like everyone else around me, but that doesn't mean it's bad because a lot of people are trying to be more and more like the world. They're not trying to be more and more like God, but we're called to be like God. And that
Yeah.
is going to make us different than the rest of the world around us.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing to be different, but I do think that we need to really think like, do I want to stand before God and have to hear him repeat to me what I said about others on the earth or the things that I spoke thoughtlessly? There's a lot of jokes that I used to make that I don't make anymore because I realized those jokes aren't funny to God. They might have been funny to me. They might have been just a joke to me, but God takes our words seriously. Um, it says in the
Exactly.
Bible. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, sister, you just continue.
I was gonna say it says in the Bible though that God is not a man that he should lie, and not he's not a son of man that he should repent. What he says he does, and what he speaks he makes good. It's one of those things where like God is not speaking idly, and we need to really think about what we say idly.
Exactly. A few days back, I was just thinking about this thing that whatever we are speaking and whatever words we are just using and just saying and declaring from our mouth, whether it is like making a life for other person and for ourselves, or whether it is like making a poison, like for the death. So it does matter, like what we are speaking for ourselves. It have to be in a positive way, not in a negative way.
Yeah. It really matters, especially if like you have whether it's a family relationship or a child or a marriage or a friendship. I used to be upset with my husband, and we were in this place where we were thinking about divorcing. And I would say things without thinking about them. And I caught myself one day being like, I don't think my husband loves me. And I realized how wrong that was for me to be confessing that into my life. And so when my husband and I are fighting, I now tell myself, Father God, I thank you that my husband does love me, that he does care about me deeply, that he has good things that he wants to do for me and good thoughts towards me. And I'll start confessing good things because I know intuitively that my husband does love me and that he does care for me. But the devil comes in and he tells us these lies and he wants us to believe them and confess them. And I realized that I was just basically helping the devil out by repeating those thoughts that he brought. We have the opportunity to reject and rebuke those thoughts or to accept them and to start speaking them into our life. And you're right,
Yeah.
it is like making a poison or like creating life. So we have the choice in what we're supposed to be speaking, and that's kind of the beautiful, wonderful thing about God is he gives us the freedom of choice. It's just sometimes we don't make the best choices and we really have to think hard about the things that we say into our own life.
Yeah, exactly. A few days back, like I cannot say that few days back, like 2 days back, I was reading Sister Victoria's book, Panic to Peace, and I was maybe on the fourth chapter, like that. So it was like that out of control thoughts. She wrote about that thing, and she wrote about like her life, like she was facing panic attacks, and she wrote like that sometimes we are having so many lies and so many thoughts that just dwelling upon our mind, and it's not from God, but we are just continuously entertaining that thoughts because we
Yeah,
are accepting, we are not rebuking or we are not rejecting, but we are just entertaining and accepting, and the enemy is trying to just control your mind in that thoughts. So I
yeah,
was just like, Father, that's really amazing, like how you have given us this choice about how we have to accept the better thing or not the good thing, like bad
yeah,
thing. So it's upon us, like how we are entertaining and how we are accepting that thoughts are like that thing.
yeah. And I can totally relate to that because I've struggled with panic attacks and different things like that in my life. And I would, I always felt crazy at the time, but I knew I had to stop the thought in its
Mm,
process. And so I would answer, no, that's not my thought out loud. I would answer the thought out loud and say, that's not my thought. I rebuke that thought. I do not accept that thought. That is not from God and it's not for me. And I would actively try, like it says in the Bible, to think about what's good and what's pure. And so I would start to, on purpose, try to think about things that were good and pure and things that I actually wanted to happen in my life. In my young years, I had experienced so many bad, negative, hard things that I used to preemptively disappoint myself and be like, nope, it's not going to go the way that you wanted. And then I was disappointed when things didn't go the way that I wanted. But I had literally prepared myself for disappointment and expected it, and even let those negative thoughts come out of my mouth be what I spoke into the world, and then was surprised and I knew the word, but I wasn't living it. And I've had to really work hard and even now still work on it because we get into habits. We form these habits and then you have to work hard to undo these things sometimes because you've let yourself for too long. And it gets easier the longer you do it, but it is a retraining of your mind and how you think.
exactly, exactly, perfectly said.
Yeah, I love in Psalms 141:3, it says, set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth, keep watch over the door of my lips. I pray this one over myself a lot because My temper is much better these days because I let God rule, and when I feel myself starting to get mad, I start praying internally because when you're around people, you can't always just pray out loud in front of everybody. But I'll start saying, God, give me wisdom and the right thing to say, because when I was young, I would get angry and I would just blurt whatever I was thinking, and there were many times where I hurt people with my words, and I felt awful after because I never wanted to hurt anyone. And it broke my heart that I actually just would say, but it was like there was no door to my mouth. There was no door to like between my mind and my mouth, and everything I thought just came out. And my mom used to jokingly say, Carissa, it's like you don't have a don't say this button in your brain. And I had to rebuke those things that were spoken over me because my mom didn't mean it in a mean way, but she had spoken that over me. She had spoken that into my life. And so I really did just blurt things out. And that's kind of what I mean by we don't think about the words that we speak over other people. My mom was a pastor, and my mom knew the word. She went to Rhema Bible College. She knew the word, but we all say things unthinkingly. And so my mom had confessed that over my life. I had to rebuke things that people had spoken over me and be like, no, I don't accept that. I can stop and think before I speak, and I can stop and pray and say, God, give me wisdom, give me knowledge in how to respond. And even last night, I did that with my husband. We were not having an argument, but he was shutting down and he didn't want to talk. And I wanted him to talk to me, and I'm in my mind praying, God, help me to have the right things to say or not to say. Give me the wisdom so that my husband feels like he's able to open up, because I want him to know that I see him, that I hear him, that I love him, that he's worth my time and energy. And God was able to help us to have a conversation that my husband felt like I wasn't listening to him and I wasn't hearing him. And I had to just stay silent. Sometimes keeping the watch over our mouth, it's just knowing when to say something and when to not say something at all. Because sometimes people need our silence. And sometimes for us as wisdom that or women, that's really hard to have that wisdom of like, don't say anything, just listen. Because we all, as women, we love to talk. But like men, sometimes they need us to just sit and give them a minute. Men are a little bit more hesitant to speak, I think, sometimes because we don't even pause for breath to give them that
Yeah.
moment to think of the response before they answer. We're like, give me your answer now. And they want a minute to think about it. They're not as word focused as we are. We're all about words, and they're a little bit more just in themselves, and we have to give them a minute. And a lot of our conversation was just me being silent and being like, I hear you, I'm listening. And that was most of my contribution.
Yeah.
Um, in Proverbs 18:20 and 21, it says, a man's stomach shall be satisfied from the fruit of his mouth, from the produce of his lips he shall be filled. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. And I think that kind of goes along with what I just said. We're all about words as women, and we talk a lot. And it's like, do I actually like the fruit of my lips? And do I want to keep talking and talking and eat this fruit? Or do I want to be a little slower to speak, a little more thoughtful in the things that I say? Do I want to concentrate more on what I am saying? And I started realizing with my kids, there were things that I would say about them that I didn't like. Like, my daughter is shy. She's a little more hesitant to get to know new people. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I started saying, well, she has anxiety. And I realized I need to stop speaking that over her. She's just shy, and there's nothing wrong with being shy. A lot of us grow out of being shy. I was very shy as a child and I grew out of it. I'm still shy when I meet new people, but I get bolder the more I know a person. But I didn't realize how much what I was speaking
Yeah.
over her was affecting her.
Mm. Sometimes you have that season of your life in which you are a little bit introvert and you
Yes,
don't want to face the people, and sometimes you are, when you are just growing up in your age or by time, so you become extrovert little bit later.
yeah,
So it's a life and we have different seasons, so it's
yes,
not a big problem.
yes. And I've seen how, as I've stopped speaking those things over my daughter, or I've started speaking better things over my son, because there's a time where my son he's a lot like me, he would speak without thinking about it, and he didn't realize the consequences of things that he said. And so he was getting in trouble at school for things that when he was angry, he said in the heat of the moment, but he didn't mean. And I was saying, well, Cannon's so much like me, he doesn't think before he speaks. And I started changing the way that I spoke about my son and started speaking all the good things that I can see in him. And I've really seen my son change for the better and seen so many of his good things, his good characteristics, his good personality traits really flourish and come out.
Yeah.
And it's been really eye-opening to see that, like, the things that I speak specifically over my family, there's fruit there, and it's all dependent on what I say. And I can have good fruit or I can have bad fruit. And I really am more interested in the good fruit. So I've really been working to change what I say. I think that I might have, we're frozen maybe. Are you there? Okay, well, I'm gonna go into James 2 through 12. Oh, are you back? There you are.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. I was gonna say it's just a little frozen. We're doing better this time. Um, oh, and we're frozen again. So I'm gonna read James 3. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, perfect. You can continue, sister.
Okay. James 3 2 through 12, it says, indeed, we all make many mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every other way. We can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of a small bit in its mouth, and a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. People can tame all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish, but no one can tame the tongue. It is restless and evil, full of deadly poison. Sometimes it praises our Lord and Father, and sometimes it curses those who have been made in the image of God. And so blessing and cursing come pouring out of the same mouth. Surely, my brother and sisters, this is not right. Does a spring of water bubble out with both fresh water and bitter water? Does a fig tree produce olives or a grapevine produce figs? No, and you can't draw fresh water from a salty spring. This makes me think of the scripture about the renewing of the mind, because
Hmm.
my mom always used to say to me, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And it's scripture, but it's like the King James, so it's the old English version. Um, but my
Mm.
parents were very much like, what you say matters. And the more we renew our mind, the more our heart is in line with God, the more our spirit and soul and body, our mind, will, and emotions will all come into alignment with God. And it all is about, what am I putting in? What am I watching? What am I seeing? What am I reading? Um, and so often we don't think about how what we're putting in, there's so much negative attached to it. Or what the things that we watch on TV, how much negative is attached to it. Hey, that's enough. Sorry, my daughter's cats are in my room and they're fighting.
It's
um,
so cool.
they're like hissing at each other, and I was like, that's enough. um, sorry, but it matters the thing. I'm sorry, but it matters the things that we put in, because what we put in comes out. And so when I started coming back to God, I realized there were certain shows that I watched. They weren't bad shows, but there were negative things that people said. And I tend to be a more sensitive person. I am a woman, but like, even when it comes to things that people say, I tend to be more affected. And I have to work on that. Honestly, it's something that I know I need to be less sensitive, but I
Yeah.
realized I would carry those things with me. Sorry, the cat was trying to climb the chair for a moment. But I would carry those things with me, and I was being more affected by those things than I should have been. And so God, I felt like, was calling me to watch less TV, to pull away from certain things, not because they were bad, but because they were affecting me and they were affecting what came out when I spoke. And so I took this period of time where I kind of pulled away from everything. I deleted all my social media accounts. I didn't watch anything on TV except for preaching. I spent time, a lot of alone time, honestly. I pulled back from a lot of friends, not because I didn't love my friends, but because a lot of my friends were not Christians and they weren't speaking life. They were speaking, oh, this happened today and life is always this way and it never gets better. And they were saying things. And because I was so in that habit of negative speaking, I was jumping right in with them and like, yep, you're right. It never gets better. It's always the same. And so I had to kind of pull back, not because I don't love them, but because I found myself joining right in, and I needed to take that season apart to strengthen myself in God, so that when I got around people that I love but aren't believers, I could speak life into them and speak good things around them and create a different atmosphere. And so I think
Exactly.
sometimes it's important to like, what am I saying? And where is my rudder steering me?
Exactly. And I can say that this is very much needed. If you are not feeling good in that environment or in that circle of your friends, then it's absolutely fine to pull yourself back.
Yeah. Especially because, like, what do you say about each other? Even if you're just joking, do you make negative jokes about each other, or do you speak life about each other? I so often am the one that is speaking positively, the one encouraging other people. And I didn't even realize that, like, I had become a very negative person over a period of time, and I would make jokes that I didn't like making. And I realized when I took that step back, there's jokes that I am making that I would not be making if I hadn't let myself not necessarily be surrounded by these people, but be so far from God. If I was renewing myself in the Word and actually putting God in the forefront of my mind at all times, I would not be saying these things. I don't even like that I say these things. And it changed a lot of the way that I speak.
Yeah, exactly. You know, sister, I can say that when you are perfectly following Christ in your life and you are just doing physical Christian life, then it's mean that the wrong things automatically cutting out. from your life,
Yeah.
whether it is friends and whether it is negative relationships and all that stuff. So it's automatically cut off from your life. So
Yeah.
I can say that it's very important.
Yeah. Um, and this kind of moves us into Proverbs 12:18 and 19. It says, some people make cutting remarks, but the words of the wise bring healing. Truthful words stand the test of time, but lies are soon exposed. So I think it's so important that what we say is not just good because we want to say positive things, but what we say, if we are making God the forefront of our mind, we're putting him first, we're walking in the things of God, our words can literally be a healing balm, if you will, to a wounded person. Because so many times I've realized I have friends where there is no one who speaks good in their life. I'm thinking of a particular friend. I went to cosmetology school with them, and their mom would just constantly be speaking negative. And they were 19 when I met them. They turned 20. They just turned 21 recently. And there was so much negativity being spoken into this person's life. And they're one of the kindest, sweetest, most giving human beings I'd ever met in my life. And I realized that a lot of the things that were going on in their life were going on because nobody had ever spoken something nice over them or good about them. And I just started being like, no, that's not true. The things that they're saying about you are not true. You are loving and kind and giving. You're not selfish. You're not self-centered. You love people and you give when you don't have it to give. Because I mean, when we met, they were 19. They just graduated high school. They had no income really other than a babysitting job that they did. But every chance that they got, every time they had money, they would spend it to buy everybody who was graduating all these gifts. And it was one of those things where, like, you could see the heart of a person that so desperately wanted to be loved, and they were just not getting it. And it was, as a mom, so heartbreaking because I was like, what kind of mother speaks these things over their children? And it broke my heart. And you don't realize the words that you say, they matter because somebody that you're speaking to, they might have no one else speaking good things
Yeah.
about them. They might not have a person in their family that speaks love over them. And so what you say, it matters because that love of God needs to shine through for people.
Yeah, exactly. Whether you are just sowing fruit in their life or just not sowing good thing
Yeah.
in their life. So it
Yeah.
does matter.
Yeah. Proverbs 21:23 says, watch your tongue and keep your mouth shut, and you will stay out of trouble. And I think that is a great one because it's so interesting how that one goes with the one before, because in Proverbs 12:18 and 19 says, truthful words stand the test of time, but lies are soon exposed. And this actually makes me think of a different student in my school. She would cause fights because she would spread lies. She would say things that weren't true, and she would think that she could get away with it, but we're in a school of girls, everybody talks to each other, and so we would realize that she said something about someone that wasn't true. They didn't say that, and she was making things up. And if she had just not said anything at all, she could have prevented herself from getting in a lot of trouble. But she ended up in a lot of confrontational situations because she was speaking lies and speaking things that weren't true. Whereas if she had just been quiet, she could have prevented a lot of things. But it's so interesting how a lot of times we just can't help ourselves. We'll say
Yeah.
something and maybe we didn't mean to say it, or we'll say something that's not true to make ourselves look better. And we end up in all kinds of trouble that we wouldn't have been in if we had just been quiet. I can think of another example from my own life. I'm the oldest out of four children, and my youngest brother was born at home. All the rest of us were born in the hospital, but my grandmother was a very, very fearful woman. And so she didn't want my mom to have kids at all because she didn't want my mom to possibly die during childbirth. My grandmother had um, she had a lot of miscarriages. She lost a child when she was very young before she had my mom and my uncle. And so she was very fearful. And so every time my mom had a baby, she was like, you could die. She was very fearful. And my mom did not tell my grandmother that she had my baby brother at home. She was not going to tell her. She didn't want to make her afraid and she didn't want to be yelled at. And I, as a small child, not realizing that, like, how mad she was going to be. I went, Grandma, don't be mad at mom, but brother was born at home. And I told her the secret. And she was very angry, not at me, but at my mom. And it caused a big issue. But again, if I had said nothing, I could have avoided trouble. But as a child, my desire to be honest and forthcoming, I went and I said something that I should not have said. And it caused a big fight that I did not realize it would cause. And it just goes to show that, like, even if you have good intentions, sometimes it's better to say nothing than to maybe even tell the truth to somebody who's not ready to hear it and is ready to fight. If
Yeah,
they hear something they don't want to hear, it's where discretion and wisdom really comes in handy, asking God, hey, should I say this thing, God, or not right now? Is this not the time to say this thing?
exactly. Everything has a perfect time to just
Yes.
speak about.
Yes, and it really is
Yeah.
important. It goes into Proverbs 13:3, and it says, those who control their tongues will have a long life. Opening your mouth can ruin everything. And I think sometimes there are things that in America, there are people that they go to the bar, they get drunk, they start saying things, they start a fight, and then before you know it, there's a fight and somebody has ended up dead because they all had drunken tempers raging. But that can happen even if people haven't been drinking. There have been fights and families that broke out and somebody died because the fight went too far, or relationships were broken forever and they can't be mended because people said things in the heat of a moment or they didn't think before they spoke. And so our words have a real life altering, life changing effect. There were relationships early on in my life with me and my husband where people said things that were not true about both of us and tried to destroy our relationship. And sometimes those people didn't know that the things that they were saying were a lie, that they'd been told by somebody else. And other times those people did know that it was a lie, but they didn't like
Yeah.
us being together because they were unhappy in their relationship. And so they didn't want us to be happy in our relationship. And they were just trying to cause destruction. And it matters what you say, it matters what you speak. And luckily, my husband and I, we talked and we were able to work things out or understand that what was being said was not true. And it caused fights for us, though, that we would not have had to have if somebody hadn't been speaking lies about us or into our life. And so it just goes to show that, like, the things that you say, they really matter. And it just is so funny because our biblical example is in Numbers with the
Yeah.
12 scouts in the land of Canaan, and how the Israelites were promised this beautiful land by God, and they never even got to see it because these scouts came back and gave a bad report to all the people. And it's like they went and they spread lies that if they hadn't spread, the people of Israel would have been able to walk in, conquer the people that were there, and live in that land flowing with milk and honey and fruit and vegetables and fertile ground. And been so happy, but they missed out. A whole generation of them missed out on this promised land because of a handful of people that didn't control their mouths, that decided to speak evil. And the fruit of their lips robbed an entire generation. Um, and I'll read that real quick, and then I'll read my story from Brother Hagen.
Mm-hmm.
It says in 30, but Caleb tried to quiet the people as they stood before Moses. Let's go at once and take the land, he said. We certainly, we can certainly conquer it. But the other men who had explored the land with him disagreed. We can't go up against them. They are stronger than we are. So they spread this bad report about the land among the Israelites. The land we traveled through and explored will devour anyone who goes to live there. All the people we saw there were huge. We even saw giants there, the descendants of Enoch. Next to them, we felt like grasshoppers, and that's what they thought too. And that's the thing is like, when did they ever say, "Oh, we also see you as grasshoppers"? Because later on, when they did come to the land, the next generation, they found out that those people were afraid of them because they'd heard about the miracles that God had done for them in Egypt,
Yeah.
and they were actually terrified of the Israelites. So this report was not true, it was a lie. And it robbed these people. It matters the things that we say because the lies that we spread can rob entire generations of our family, our bloodline. And we don't even realize that we can rob ourselves and the ones that we love with the things that we say.
Mm. Exactly. Exactly. And this sets a very perfect example for that.
Yeah. Um, so I'm going to read this story. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see the words because the book is
Yeah.
tiny. So this is actually called Words. There we go. And it's by Kenneth Hagen. And
Okay.
I love this story, although it makes me sad because it's such a great example of how powerful our words are. Um, but I had never heard this story. I've listened to him preach on YouTube, and I have old recordings, and I have so many books of his. And until I read this book, I had never heard of this story. And it really broke my heart the first time I heard it because it's about a husband and a wife. And it made me really think about the words that I said over my husband. And this is when I kind of saw how much my words impact my husband. So it says in June 1943, I was starting a meeting for a pastor in the East Texas oil fields. He had a serious heart attack. One of the neighboring pastors told me, Brother Hagen, for 2 or 3 days, the doctor tried to get us to quit praying for Pastor A. He was between life and death, and the doctor said, You're holding him here by your prayers and faith. If he doesn't revive, if he does revive, which I doubt, his mind will never be right because blood didn't get to his brain for more than 10 minutes. But we just couldn't stop praying for him, the pastor said. We kept praying. The third day, Pastor A revived, and his mind is all right. The doctors are shocked. Pastor A had not resumed preaching yet. His wife, who was also a minister, was filling the pulpit. My wife and I and our children stayed in the parsonage with them, and we all went to church in one car. One night, Pastor A started to make an announcement, and he said it backwards. The minute he got into the car, his wife said, "You made a mess of that. It's just like the doctor said, I guess you'll have to quit preaching." My wife spoke up and said, There's nothing wrong with Kenneth's mind, yet he did worse than your husband. Kenneth got his tongue tangled up 3 times tonight. But Pastor A's wife said, You'll have to quit preaching. She was constantly telling him what he couldn't do. One day, after we ate our main meal, my wife went to the beauty shop and Pastor A went to visit someone who was sick. So I helped Mrs. A with the dishes. As we were standing there washing and drying the dishes, the Lord inspired me to say, Sister A, I don't know how you'll take this, but if you don't quit talking like you do to your husband, he'll be dead in 2 years. You're going to talk him to death. Mrs. A flared up at me and said, Now just Mrs. A flared up at me, and I said, Now just wait a minute, sister. Wait just a minute. You know that wasn't Kenneth Hagin who said that. The Spirit of God inspired me to tell you that. I would stake my life on it. So she simmered down and said, Brother Hagin, we've known you for a number of years, and we know how God uses you, so I'll accept that from the Lord. While we were there, she did better. A year later, we were visiting them again, and she was right back to her old ways, talking death to her husband, saying, You're gonna die, you'll never make it. I tried to stop her, but she just shook her head no and wouldn't listen. Then a few months later, I was holding a revival for a friend who pastored Brother A's home church. And while I was in that revival, they came and preached Brother A's funeral. I compared notes, and it was almost exactly 2 years from the day that I had that word from his had that word for his wife. After his death, Mrs. A got angry at God because her husband died. She never preached another sermon. She backslid, and as far as I know, their children never lived for the Lord. Thank God her husband went to heaven. All that happened because of words. I think it's really sad that just the speaking negatively and the speaking of those words over her husband cost him his life. And I think it's such a pertinent example of how important our words are and how much they really matter. And what we say over the people that we love matters.
Hmm. Exactly. It was an amazing story.
Yeah. And again, it's not super modern, but it is more modern than the
Yeah,
Bible. And I think
exactly.
it just goes to show that even ministers can fall short in this. In
Hmm.
like even the average day, everyday person, the thing that you speak over your spouse or over your friends or over people that you work with, it matters. Like the confession of "Ugh, this workplace is always so negative." You're speaking more of that into your workplace. If you want it
Yeah.
to be different, start praying over that place, start confessing good things. What we say has power, especially as believers, because we have the power of God residing in us. And so we have even more power than the average person, I think, when we speak, because we have the power of God backing us up. But it just depends on what we're speaking. You have the power of life and death in your tongue. So are you going to speak life or are you going to speak death?
And I can say that the spirit of Lord lives inside of us. So we have to think about it, like whatever
Yeah.
we are speaking from our mouth, for other person and for our lives as well. We always
Yeah.
have to think, and we always have to speak positive for everyone and for ourselves,
Yes.
which produce good fruit for our lives and for others' life.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing time we had. That was very amazing. Thank you so much, Charissa.
Thank you so much for having me again. I love doing this.
Yeah, it was an amazing time together in the presence of the Lord, and how we discussed about this topic, the power of tongue and the power of your words. And when we take this topic and when we take think in our practical life, then we will understand like what we are saying from our mouth at any like consequences or what situation it is. So we know like whatever what we are saying, whether it is positive or negative.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Sister Karsa. And thank you everyone who are just watching right now. Thank you for allowing me and Sister Karsa to minister you all today. And we honestly enjoying doing this series with you all and for you all. So thank you so much. And once again, may Lord bless you all. And I hope this topic finds you in a good way. And I believe you will just gonna change your life before you are just making negative words for yourself or for others. But now you know, like we have to speak good words for ourselves and for others, which produce fruit for your life. So thank
Yeah.
you, and let the Lord bless you all. So bye bye, take care, and God bless you.